What is the craziest it's a small world moment you've experienced? My father got a Zippo lighter during his first of 2 tours in Vietnam. On the Zippo was the unit insignia and his name, etched on the back. After years with the lighter, he lost it during training in Alabama. Half a decade later, while we were living in Wakefield, RI, there was a Gulf station on the main street. Back then, gas stations were all full service and my parents were decent people who would chat with anyone, and, having both come from poverty, they had a particular soft spot for service workers. They knew the station attendant by first name and he knew theirs. One day the station guy came up to fill up Dad's car and said, "Hey Mr. H, I found your lighter. You must have dropped it." The attendant said he found it right there by the pumps. Sure enough, same lighter, etched name, half the country, and 5 or 6 years away from where he lost it. Met a lady at work who grew up in the same house I grew up in, 25 years before I did. No, not my mom. Her parents owned the house 2 owners before my parents did. Conversation went like this. Me, where did you grow up? Her, in city X with 400k population. Me, same here. Whereabouts? Her, suburb Y. Me, huh, same here. What street? Her, name of 8-mile long street that I lived on. Me, huh, same here. What cross street? Her, same cross street I lived on. Me, you lived on my court? Cool. What address? Her, same dang address. We both tripped out. This one's pretty cool. Must have been almost scary to make that realization. I was on a deployment with a bunch of dudes I didn't know. One day we're sitting around having a few beers, getting to know each other. It comes out that Sergeant Smith and I have something in common. His soon-to-be ex-wife is from the area of Texas that I grew up in. So the questioning went like this. SGT. Her family lives out by the Puddle Jump Airport. ME. That's funny. I know a girl that grew up around that airport. She was a paralegal before she joined the military. SGT. My soon-to-be ex-wife used to be a paralegal before joining the military. ME. Does she have long, very straight brown hair, blue eyes? SGT. Yup. ME. Does she have a green lizard tattoo on her left boob? SGT. Did he frick my wife? ME. Yup. We became pretty good friends afterwards. You guys are Eskimo brothers. Met 2 Swedish guys while backpacking around New Zealand. Don't see them for 3 months. No contact. Not even a Facebook contact. Then, scuba diving in Thailand. I emerge from the water, look up at the nearest boat, and guess who's sitting there closest to where I am in the water? It was unreal. Your life sounds fun. On my 21st birthday I was walking down the pier at Redondo Beach. Bumped into this guy. It was Dave, my roommate from the previous semester in college. In Michigan. I was in LA for a week on a road trip. He was in LA for 1 day. 10 million people in the city and I have to run into fricking Dave. I hated Dave. I thought we were friends. The first Dropkick Murphys show I ever went to, I got punched in the face in the pit. This guy with a big, black mohawk pulls me out, gets me a water and sits down with me to make sure I'm okay. The next week I'm at a Screeching Weasel concert and get tackled by a stranger. Turns out to be big, black mohawk. A few months later I'm at Warped Tour walking through the crowd. I feel a hand on my shoulder. It's big, black mohawk. A bit after that I'm at dinner with my parents, who's also there. Big, black mohawk who then invites me to a Fugazi show. I decline. Years later, I'm hanging with my then boyfriend who's telling me about a Fugazi show he went to with his friend who had a big, black mohawk. I swear, that dude was stalking me, but I wouldn't have cared. He was so nice. In the late 1800s it was very expensive to have photos taken. When I was younger my grandma used to talk about how her grandparents had gotten portraits taken on their wedding day. They were large portraits in oval frames and she remembered them hanging in her aunt's home when she was growing up. Somehow the family lost track of them over the years and my grandma always mourned their loss. One day my grandma and I were shopping at an estate sale and she was looking through a box of old photos. She suddenly called me over and said that she had found some pictures of some of her second cousins. She dug through the box and found more pictures of relatives. It was so weird. I went to find the owner and it was a young guy, early 30s. My grandma asked him about the photos and he said that his great aunt had died with no children and that he had inherited her estate. He said she collected old photos and told us there were many more in the attic that we could look through. We went up there and there they were, the 2 portraits of my great-great-grandparents on their wedding day. They looked exactly as grandma had described them and she immediately burst into tears. The guy was really nice and let her keep all the pictures for free. It's still one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I hope you keep in touch with this guy. From what I read here, I think he's your second cousin once removed. I'm Chinese. I pretty much have to keep track of exactly how I am related to each person in my family in order to know what to refer to them as. I met this guy from across the country on a cruise ship who had the same elementary school band teacher as I did. My teacher moved from Washington State to Rhode Island. That's cool and all, but I'm curious how you two started talking about your elementary school band teachers on a cruise ship. This one time, at band camp, I was on a family vacation with my grandparents in Alaska. One night we stop in a restaurant and after sitting down for about 2 minutes my grandfather gets a very puzzled look on his face. We ask him what it's about but he brushes it off. My grandparents' drinks and my soda arrived but still this look of perplexity won't leave his face. Finally my grandmother asks his what the matter is. He says I can't get over it. I'm certain I know that waiter but for the life of me I can't place him. My grandmother and I both kind of ribbed him about it as he was always bragging about how he knew someone everywhere. Now in my grandfather's defense, even before this incident happened it was true. On 4 separate occasions before and twice since I've made friends with people from totally different locations and vocations whose parents or grandparents knew my grandfather. This time though we both thought he had lost his mind. But my grandfather wouldn't let it go. By the time our appetizers came out he had had enough and asked the waiter over. The waiter came over puzzled and my grandfather told him point blank, "I know you, I'm sorry sir, but I'm sure you are mistaken." "No, I'm sure of it. We've met before. It'll come to me." The waiter chuckled a little bit and began to walk away. As he walked away my grandfather called out to him, "Did you ever work as a waiter in New York?" The waiter turned around suddenly and responded, "Yes I did." My grandfather's and the waiter's faces lit up. So as it turned out the waiter had come to New York City for 3 months when he moved to the US. And worked during that time in a restaurant that my grandfather was a regular in 22 years earlier. Needless to say nobody in our family ever questioned him again when he said he recognized someone. Someone tried to get off the ride It's a Small World in Disneyland and caused the whole ride to come to a screeching halt. We sat there for 37 full loops of the song. A few years ago I was backpacking through Europe with a friend. So we get to this hostel last minute in Barcelona and we're chilling at the hostel bar with some Brits. As I'm sitting there, in comes a dude wearing a SF Giants hat. I instantly was like, yeah dude, go Giants, and realized then that it was my friend Jack from high school, who's also my neighbor. We both got hella drunk and hung out for a few days after. When we split up, he went with his friends to Ibiza, while my buddy and I took the train up to Pamplona to do the running of the bulls. While I was running with the bulls, I look over at the dude running next to me and realize it's another friend of mine from high school, Will, who I've known since I was 5 and also was my neighbor growing up but lived in the opposite direction of the dude I ran into in Barcelona. SF Giants, hella, Bay Area status checks out. I posted my exercise bike in a for sale group on Facebook. A girl said she would have it, and could she pick it up on Sunday as she had a wedding the next day. I said I also had a wedding the next day. She turns out to be one of the bridesmaids for my boyfriend's cousin's wedding. Not exactly crazy interesting, but it was pretty weird. Man, maybe I am just tired, but I read it as you were both getting married. As such I expected that in the end she was your fiancé. I once held a meetup for the guys on my Minecraft server. Turns out 2 of them worked at the same place without each other knowing their identities. Met my next door neighbor in Disney World 4,000 miles, 6,440 km, away from home. It was a great day. Disney World seems to be a popular place to run into people you know. Back in the mid-late 90s my dad, a recent Chinese immigrant, was trying to make a living in Toronto to get enough money to bring my mom and brother over to Canada and start a new life. He was asked by someone in the Chinese community at the time to speak to other recent Chinese immigrants. Seeing as my dad had quickly found a job and a place to live after being in the country for a relatively short time. After the seminar, he started talking with a guy who had attended the seminar and listened to him speak. Zhan said he was from Xi'an, a large city in China. My dad said he was from there too. Zhan then asked if he knew Kingli. Kingli is my dad's wife and my mom. I took part in an exchange program in Germany and met some nice people from another school. One is a swell guy who challenged me to a friendly dance-off in a club and later proved to be a skilled pianist, a talented, competent person. Weeks later, while in another country, I saw him on the front page of Reddit, being extracted from a giant stone vulva by firefighters. My parents bought a house when I was in middle school in the east of God nowhere. They got a good deal because my stepdad worked with the previous owner. That family wanted to leave the house because their oldest son had run away, traveled across country, gotten involved in drugs and got shot in the head. We always had great stories about that place being haunted. 12 years later, and after living in more than a few states, I got a job working for a huge firm in a city several hours away. I started dating my HR rep. For all you college kids, don't do that. Meeting her parents, I talk about where I grew up. They mention they know the town. It was a town of a few hundred people, so I was surprised. The girl's father talked about how his brother and sister-in-law moved away after a tragedy involving their son. I asked if he was shot. They, understandably, assumed that I knew because of the size of the town. Wrong, it was my house. They showed me pictures of themselves in my childhood home, 20 years before I even saw it. Freaking surreal. Needless to say, they didn't come over for Thanksgiving. I want to know about you dating your HR rep. That sounds like a hoot. I am in the background of a picture of mine also in Mexico before we ever met. This is creepy and awesome. Show US. Pales in comparison to some of the international ones, but I always think it funny. So I was getting to know this girl at my community college. We went on a couple of dates and liked each other, but nothing came of it. I moved off to go to university quite a distance away. I end up going to a party and grinding with this cute chick a couple years younger than me. Find out that it's the first girl's sister. Anyway, it's summer now, so I came back to my hometown and I went out to a lounge a few weeks ago. There was this cute girl dancing incredibly well and I went up to her and sweet talked her a bit. Ended up dancing with her. She finds out what school I go to and, you guessed it, her cousin goes there. So I've coincidentally courted two sisters and their cousin in 3 separate cities. I think you might have a type. I was on vacation in the Bahamas with my family, and we ran into my close friend's mom. We're all from New York. What is even crazier is that my friend and I were born the same day, in the same hospital, and our moms took Lamaze together. I hear it's not all too uncommon for people who live near each other to end up meeting on a vacation. Especially back when people used local travel agents. They'd have deals at certain destinations and send a lot of people there. Must still feel very surreal though. In college, I was traveling in Europe with my mom over spring break. We were in Paris, and I had a friend who was studying there, but I couldn't seem to get in touch with him. Pre-email and cell phones. I just kept leaving messages with his roommates. So one morning, we're getting ready to go see the Eiffel Tower, and my mom breaks a tooth on a baguette. We get the hotel to help us track down a dentist, and my mom wants me to go with her because my French is a little better than hers. So the rest of our group goes to see the Eiffel Tower, but we skip it and head off to see the dentist. Right outside the dentist's office, the friend I hadn't been able to reach. I work in a retail pharmacy. The other day another pharmacy called into my store to transfer a patient into ours because they didn't have her medication in stock. The patient turned out to be my first grade teacher from nearly 2 decades ago. She was pretty old back then, now she's nearly a century. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw her. We purchased a cottage on the lake that a priest lived in. Priest ended up in a nursing home. His cousin sold the place and after all paperwork was done, wanted to meet us. Cousin tells us about the house and his cousin, and learned the priest worked at the church I attended as a kid. Turns out the priest baptized my sister, who had just passed away the year before, when she was 6 months old. I ran into one of my high school teachers at Disney World. We were both on vacation. My condolences. When I was opening my restaurant, I was being wooed by the various liquor and wine distributors. In the course of these meetings I meet Randy. While we are chatting, he asked me about my last name, which is not a very common name, and then asks if I am related to George. I say I am. He was my uncle. He tells me that he grew up next door to George. Pretty standard stuff, except that I was born and raised in California. Randy and George were in Maryland, and this conversation happened in New Hampshire. Okay, this might not be that amazing, but I will still share it. Met a girl 7 years back on the internet. Yahoo chat rooms. Here are the coincidences. She lives 500 meters away. The college where she studies is roughly 100 meters away from my college. Her cousin turned out to be a close acquaintance. We are getting married next month. 500 meters doesn't sound that far away. I'm from WV. My ex-husband was in the military and we were stationed in Hawaii. When I had my first baby at the military hospital, I ran into a guy I went to HS with whose wife was having their first baby. Same day, same hospital, 6,000 miles from home. I run into Gary all the time. I hate that guy, always talking a big game and trying to start crap. I used to travel from California to Florida to visit family during the summer. In middle school, I made the flight to Florida and I had a layover in Texas. This girl from my school was just finishing her vacation and she came from the airport I was going to, had a layover in Texas and was headed to the airport I just left. It was the same trip as mine, in reverse. We hung out in Texas until our planes left. Parents came from South America to USA after high school. We live in East Coast, USA. While I'm in high school, my father sees my schedule one day and remembers the name of a certain teacher I have. He tells me to go to him tomorrow and ask him about which high school he went to and if he knows this certain person, my uncle. So I do, and I learn that my teacher and my uncle were best friends in high school. In South America, they lost contact when my family moved here and now through me, I reunited them. My older sister was put up for adoption at birth. I found out about her about 13 years ago and have been searching for her ever since. My BF is in a Soundgarden tribute band. For the last nearly 3 years I have been to all his shows and became friendly with his bandmates and his lead singer and his GF, as you do. A little over a year ago I got an email on Facebook from a girl I didn't recognize and I assumed maybe she was possibly a fan of my BF's band. From time to time I would get MSGS or friend requests from fans of the band and became friendly with the regular fans, which is always nice. When I opened the email, the girl was asking me if I was looking for any family members and that if so, she might know who I am looking for. I had posted on some adoption databases years ago looking for my older sister and forgot about them. Turns out, this girl was also on that database, and when she entered her info to find her birth parents, was matched instantly to me. She winds up finding me. They gave her my name and contact, and she looked me up on Facebook to see if she could find me that way. When she did this, she winds up finding out that I know a lot of people that she knows. Two in particular that she has known for over 10 years. My BF's singer and his GF and his guitar player. Adding to that list is an array of people we know from local bands and bars and have been in the same places at the same time and never knew. So all this time I was looking for her and she's been connected somehow. The small world doesn't quite end there though. My stepfather is a contractor and handyman. Turns out he has been working for my sister's parents who adopted her for over 20 years. They are pretty friendly and they lived about a half hour away from us my whole life, and he never would know to make the connection to her, of course. Before leaving to NZM from the USA, my dad told me he had a friend from HS who became a college professor at one of NZ's top universities. Once I arrived, my HS group and I toured the country and eventually landed in a small town on the South Island. We were scheduled a homestay visit, but the family that was supposed to take my friend and I backed out at the last minute, so we had a replacement family. After discussing with my host dad and learning that he was a college professor, he didn't say where. I asked him if he knew my dad's friend, just on the off chance. Turns out, he was coming over to my host family's house later that night to discuss some big presentation. The look on my dad's face when he saw the two of us on a picture was priceless, but I am amazed by how many things had to align for that to happen. Dated 3 girls, all ended up being my cousins. You should check ancestry.com before you date again. You have to explain this one. A year ago I was at a work function that was held at a mall an hour away from where I live. My car at the time had a smashed in rear and looked awful. When I went to park at the mall I noticed another car that was the exact same make, color and year, so I thought it would be funny to park next to them so that when the owner came out they would think my car was theirs and freak out. 4 days ago I was back at the same mall for the first time since that prank. I had gotten my car fixed so it looked as good as new. A few hours later I came out to find the back of my car all scratched up and dented. I promptly freaked out just to realize that someone had parked their dented car next to mine. Same make, color and year. It was amazing and no one believes me. There's only one answer here. A rift in space-time caused you to park your own car, dented, next to itself, repaired. Basically you only just missed seeing yourself from the future. I moved to Seattle for school years ago from a small town in Maine. After moving out of the dorms into a random Craigslist house, we filled another room with some rando moving up from Arizona and before that Chicago and Ohio. Turns out he was originally from Maine, 4 towns away from mine. Our families knew each other and I had taken Psych 101 at the local university while still in high school and it was taught by his dad. Had a really good friend in grade school, moved away, moved to 3 different places, and then I move again to a totally different plaque. One day at Barnes & Noble, I see this guy that looks like him and ask him his name, and we were both like holy crap and broed out. I went to Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, Virginia with my mom and dad about 9 years ago. My mom ended up running into a co-worker of hers. My dad saw a friend he hadn't seen in years and I saw a friend I always played with that lived down the street from me. I thought it was really freaky but my parents thought it was hilarious. Apparently my mom is always running into people she knows. Also one of the disciplinarians at my high school ended up being the son of a man my mom had dated when she was in high school. I never got a detention after I found out and told him. He even brought in one of his dad's old ebooks and showed my mom when she was in high school. 4 years ago I went to Vegas, go into the bathroom of a casino, and find a childhood friend of mine there washing his hands in the bathroom. Last summer, in Orlando for vacation, run into the same guy as I was going into the bathroom. So this happened back when I was tending bar. This particular Saturday night I am vibing with this really cute girl as is wont to happen at a bar. As the night winds down, she invites me over to an after hours party at her place. I blow through my cash out and closing work and head over. Things happen and we roll around the sheets. In the afterglow I invite her to my place the next day to hang out wakeboarding and cooking out. A summertime Sunday tradition with me and my roommate. We exchange digits. I give her directions and I head home. The next day, right on time she rolls up to the house. She walks and looks around and asks if I know Lynn V. I say sure, she was my previous roommate's best friend. She then tells me that she had been to my house before, a year earlier when she met Lynn at a bar one night. I go to find out that she ended up having sex in my bed with Lynn. I was out of town, and that she really preferred women but were bored with them at the moment. It knocked me off my game while I processed the information, but then the light bulb went off. After that we had a great day on the boat hanging out and wakeboarding. We ended up seeing each other for a month or so. Fun times. Why we broke it off is a funny Seinfeld-esque story. I'll save that for another day. Why we broke it off is a funny Seinfeld-esque story. I'll save that for another day. This isn't your damned blog. Tell the story now. Got a wrong number messaging me thinking it was one of his friends. I pretended to be him for a month or two just out of boredom. One weekend I go about 3 hours upstate in New York. The guy messages me just to see what's up. I tell him I'm at a fair with my grandmother. He says oh snap, no way, me too. Which one? I'm at a fair in a small town with one gas station and the nearest McDonald's being about 40 minutes away, and this guy that's been texting me is about 2 booths over trying to catch rubber ducks out of a kiddie pool. Just a few months ago, my husband and I were in Venice, Italy, having dinner near our hotel. We started talking to the couple at a table near us because they were clearly speaking English, American English. Turns out we live a few blocks apart and frequent the same pizza joint. My husband was on vacation with his first wife in Cancun, Mexico, when they were still married 20 plus years ago. They left their hotel for a day trip to go snorkeling, and their next door neighbors were on the catamaran with them. Turned out they were even staying at the same resort, too. I guess they didn't talk to their next door neighbors that much. Went to Japan. In the hotel lobby I see the guy who used to work at the Dunkin' Donuts at my university in Pennsylvania. Maybe out of context a little, but I dreamt of a girl that I've never known and I found her on Facebook. I dreamt that we met as strangers and progressively more intimate after she introduced herself. When I woke up, I felt like I've been with her for my whole life. I immediately went to Facebook her name and guess what? I found her profile with the exact face and name. I got into a small scuffle at a concert in September 2012. The guy was very drunk and kept messing with some girls in front of us. One of them started yelling. I pulled him off and gave him a couple of good hits. He was then escorted to the door. Fast forward to September 2013. I began talking to a girl that my good friend introduced me to. I attended a concert with her and one of her friends. We got to talking about the shows we've seen and the things that happened at them. One of the shows that was brought up was the one in September 2012. She said a drunk guy had been falling on her all night, and then a guy knocking him out. Turns out we moved to the same town at the same time, May 2009, and lived maybe 100 yards from each other. Me and the girl started dating, and now live together. Driving through Newport Beach, I see a truck with Montana plates starting with the number 6. At a stoplight, before the light turned green, the driver and I figure out that my dad used to work for his grandfather at Lurkine's SP ice cream shop. Have a good one you two poo or grizzlies. You have been visited by the Holy Fruit Boy. If you comment Tiny Turtle he will bless you with unlimited holy fruits. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.